Chapter 14, The Skeletal System, Part 4. The structure of bone, types of osseous tissue. There are several different types of tissue in bones. One category is osseous, which is classified as two types. One is compact bone tissue, also known as cortical, which forms the extremely hard outside layer of bones. It gives bone its smooth, dense, solid appearance. It accounts for about 80% of the total bone mass of the adult skeleton. Then there is spongy bone tissue called cancellous or trabecular, and it fills part or all of the interior of many bones. Spongy bone is porous like a sponge, containing an irregular network of spaces. It has a greater surface area than compact bone, but makes up only 20% of bone mass. Other tissues in bones. Besides compact and spongy, bones contain several other tissues, including blood vessels and nerves. Bones also contain bone marrow and periosteum. Bone marrow is a soft, connective tissue that is found inside a cavity called the marrow cavity. There are two types of marrow in adults: yellow bone marrow, which consists mostly of fat, and red bone marrow containing hematopoietic stem cells that give rise to red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and this all happens through the process of hematopoiesis. All marrow is red in newborns, but by adulthood, much of the red marrow has changed to yellow marrow. In adults, red marrow is found mainly in the femur, ribs, vertebrae, and pelvic bones. Periosteum is a tough, fibrous membrane of connective tissue that covers the outer surface of bones. It provides a protective covering for compact bone tissue and is the source of new bone cells. Bone cell review. We looked at these earlier in our tissues chapter. Bone tissues are composed of four different types of bone cells. Osteogenic cells are undifferentiated stem cells. They are the only bone cells that can divide. When they do, they differentiate and develop into osteoblasts. Osteoblasts make a protein mixture that is composed primarily of collagen and creates the organic part of the matrix. They also release calcium and phosphate ions that form mineral crystals within the matrix, and they produce hormones like osteocalcin that help mineralize the matrix. Osteocytes form from osteoblasts that have become trapped within their own bone matrix. They help regulate the formation and breakdown of bone tissue. They have multiple cell projections that are thought to be involved in communication with other bone cells. Osteoclasts are bone cells with multiple nuclei that resorb or break down bone tissue by dissolving the minerals in bone and releasing them into the blood. They develop from hematopoietic stem cells in the bone marrow. Bone is an active tissue. It's constantly remodeled by the work of osteoblasts and osteoclasts. Osteoblasts continually make new bone, and osteoclasts keep breaking down bone. This allows for minor repairs of bones as well as the homeostatic balance of mineral ions. Microscopic bone anatomy. The basic microscopic unit of bone is an osteon, or also called Haversian system. Osteons are roughly cylindrical structures that can measure several millimeters long and around 0.2 millimeters in diameter. So who knows what those really are and what they would look like, but 0.2 millimeters would be 7/1000th of an inch. Each osteon consists of lamellae, which are thin parallel layers of compact bone that surround a central canal, or also known as a Haversian canal. Osteoblasts make the matrix of bone, which calcifies, or also we could say hardens. This entraps the mature bone cells, osteocytes, in chambers called lacunae. The Haversian canal contains the bone's blood vessels. These vessels connect to caniculae, translated as little canals, that are thought to distribute food to and remove wastes from the osteocytes in their lacunae. So here we have our complex bone structure. Look at all the blood vessels in there. And also notice there's something called a lymphatic vessel. So these lymphatic vessels are transporting white blood cells and also filtering the blood and trapping debris into eventually something like a lymph node where it can be cleansed by white blood cells. So bone is very complex and alive, of course. Many of you understand this, but it is an amazingly dynamic tissue which looks to be inert but isn't. Types of bones. There are 6 types of bones in the human body based on their shape or location. Long bones are characterized by a shaft that is much longer than it is wide and by a rounded head at each end of the shaft. Long bones are made mostly of compact bone with lesser amounts of spongy bone and marrow. Most bones of the limbs, including those of the fingers and toes, are long bones. Short bones are roughly cube-shaped and have only a thin layer of compact bone surrounding a spongy bone interior. The bones of the wrists and ankles are short bones. Flat bones are thin and generally curved with 2 parallel layers of compact bone sandwiching a layer of spongy bone. Most bones of the skull are flat bones, as is the sternum. Types of bones include sesamoid bones, which are embedded in tendons, which is the connective tissue that binds muscles to bones. Sesamoid bones space tendons from joints, so the angle of the tendons is increased, amping up the leverage of muscles. The patella is an example of a sesamoid bone. Sutural bones are very small bones that are located between the major bones of the skull, within the joints or sutures between the larger bones. They are not always present. Irregular bones are those that do not fit into any of the above categories. They generally consist of thin layers of compact bone surrounding a spongy bone interior, which is, as you see, a pattern here. Their shapes are irregular and complicated. Examples of irregular bones include the vertebrae and the bones of the pelvis. And here's classification of bones by shape. So we have shapes, and then we should also remember that the shape does dictate the function of the bone.